Hey, I'm Nick Rush.
And I'm Benji Allred.
And welcome to the first ever episode of Back Row Film Reviews.
Today we'll be reviewing Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We're going to be those pretentious buttholes who review movies and think we know things about movies solely on the fact that we love movies. And we watch a lot of them. That is our only credentials here.
The beautiful thing about filmmaking is it is totally subjective, so we understand if our opinions don't fall in line with yours.
But we want to make it clear that the fact that a movie is made in the first place is highly respectable. So even if we trash a film, we highly respect it for just the fact of being made, because that in of itself is incredibly impossible if you know anything about film.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story is the first standalone Star Wars movie that takes place between the events of Star Wars Episode 3 and Star Wars Episode 4, and it follows a group of rebels that try and steal the plans to the Death Star.
Spoiler alert, they get the plans, destroy the Death Star, 3 times now?
Yeah.
3 times.
Technically 3 times. I am one of the biggest Star Wars fans I know.
Second biggest.
I went into this expecting it to just knock my socks off. It's been getting crazy good reviews.
Yeah, crazy good.
Everyone says that it's better than Star Wars Episode 7, or even as good as The Empire Strikes Back.
And better than the prequels, which doesn't make any sense at all.
That one I believed.
Stop saying it's the best movie since The Empire Strikes Back. I think with the trailers, I wasn't super stoked, but then as soon as the reviews started coming out and all like the gossip and stuff, I've been getting pretty pumped. Give me your best facial reaction of after seeing the movie. Yeah, it was just kind of like that, like...
It was not by any means a terrible movie. It was not deserving of all the rave reviews that it's been getting. So we're going to review this movie. We're going to get into some pretty heavy spoiler territory. So if you don't want to know anything about Rogue One or haven't seen the film, go ahead and click the button above our heads or to the sides of us. I don't know where it's going to be.
Somewhere.
On my face. Click that button and it'll skip you to the end where we rate the movie.
We're going to critique the movie now. First category. Story.
So what did you think about the story of Rogue One?
That one's a little bit hard for me. I feel like going into the film, we already know the story. We know pretty much the ending, where it's going to go the whole time. So to me, it wasn't something like, oh, I'm finding out new stuff.
The only thing that was driving me was to find out what happened to these characters that I didn't know. Yeah. Let's talk about the beginning of this movie. Let's talk about the scroll, or the lack thereof.
With the score just immediately popping you in, which I respect in a way, just because it immediately tells you, okay, this is different from the original saga. I didn't know what to do without reading, the whole story beforehand.
But then the story kicks off and we're jumping from planet to planet to planet, bouncing around from all these characters.
You really wanted to just fall in love with these characters, which I think through the writing for me didn't happen for very well.
There were just too many characters, where I feel like if they had just picked just 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of those characters instead of the 6 or 7 people we're bouncing around to. Yeah, it's like, okay, here's Jyn as a little girl. This is what happens here. Okay, all of a sudden, Bodhi Rook is this pilot, and he's trying to talk to some guy. We don't know. Oh, we're gone.
How do you remember all their names? Man. This Star Wars film had the most, abstract names in any Star Wars film. Like, the other ones, you're like, Luke, Leia. Huh. And then this one, you get, Babu and Geordi.
That first act, to me, it was fun, but as far as the character development there for the beginning of the story, it was severely lacking.
After that little intro and she's left on her own and her father leaves and everything, I don't care. I don't feel anything for our main character. The captain guy,
Cassian Andor.
Our first introduction to him, he shoots a guy in the back. I feel like that's supposed to tell us this guy is evil right? But I don't feel like that's ever brought up again.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like, hey, this is a good guy. He's fighting for the rebellion. The guys who we've always been taught are the good guys.
Yeah.
But he kills this guy, which clearly like shows that there's, you know, a darker side, a gray area to the choices that these rebels have to make.
It's got like a dark, sexy side to him.
It's that Spanish accent, man. But so that I felt like was going to come up again. It kind of did when he's ordered to kill Galen. But instead, like, he just puts the gun down and then there's no further explanation.
He had no motivation to put his gun down.
No, exactly.
When he's about to shoot her father.
Yeah, where did that motivation come from?
I'm not going to. Let's talk about the blind guy.
Donnie Yen as Sharut Imwe.
There's a lot of words coming out of your mouth.
Did you like him?
No.
Really?
Oh my gosh. His character felt like the quintessential cliche Force guy. I think that blind guy sees more than the rest of us. It's just, and they point out he's blind like 20 times in the movie. A stormtrooper even like yells out, he's blind.
I agree with you that he's just stereotypical blind guy with some mystical powers. Beyond that, I thought he was so awesome, man. His fighting was great. He was a standout in this movie for me.
Seriously.
He really was.
Dude, he was a weak link for me.
Man, I loved him.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. We all have prisons inside our mind.
Oh, that was good.
Oh,
that was great.
Man.
What about Baze, his sidekick? The guy with the machine gun.
He was pretty rad. I think if he wasn't there, I would have hated the blind guy even more.
Okay, so they get this team together. Basically, they've found out that Jin's dad is the creator of the Death Star.
Her dad, friggin' exposition out the wazoo.
But I'm glad that it's in there somewhere in the Star Wars universe, because now that plot hole from those other movies where you're just like, really? Like, they had this little, like, hole there and nobody, like, bothered to just board it up so that they couldn't blast it?
As far as, like, story goes, the motivation for the Temple Guardians to join them, like, I had no idea. Like, obviously they were in the same, like, prison as them and kind of heard all of that. It was never, like, apparent to me, like, okay, yeah, like, we'll just go and do everything with you now.
But yeah, there's no real explanation as to what their motivations are beyond, all right, we're here.
It's kind of a common theme throughout the whole movie, people's motivations not really being there. The biggest thing we wanted was to fall in love with these characters, and that's the biggest lacking.
The Rebel Alliance won't go help them, so they're going to go and take matters into their own hands. They take a small force, and they go and they end up on this planet, which is where they keep all of the plans for everything that the Empire has ever made in this one building.
Just all in one place.
They go to steal those, and all hell breaks loose.
That's where it got good for me.
In that third act, every team member, even though we didn't really know who they were or have any character development really, they each played like a very vital role.
So many people died by grenades in this movie. Or I should say maybe explosions. The pilot, the blind guy, his sidekick. Even our two main characters at the end explode.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Forest Whitaker exploded.
So actually everyone on the team explodes in some way, shape, or form.
Best part of the whole movie.
Darth Vader just comes in. It's dark, you just hear him breathing, he ignites his lightsaber.
Illuminates everything.
And just wreaks havoc on like these 7 dudes.
It's the moment we've always wanted to see Darth Vader in.
When the guy is up on the glass, help us! Like all these guys flying around in the background.
Oh my gosh. And he uses so much force, which we've been waiting for forever. It's everything we've ever wanted.
Good. So the ship takes off, and the guy runs it in, and he's like, Your Highness, and guess who turns around?
CGI
Princess Leia.
With buns as big as you could believe. Technology hasn't gotten there yet.
No, we're like this close. But if we're not actually there, don't do it.
It was fun in some parts, and it was kind of hard just like already knowing the general story of things, so that makes it hard to go into. So many cliches of bad dialogue and poorly written characters. Out of 10, I would probably put it maybe at like a 5.
I liked the story. Yeah, there were things in the writing that I really could take it or leave it, you know, dialogue, things like that. So for the story as a whole, could have been better, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Category number 2, acting.
Whew.
Sounds like it's going to be pretty positive for you.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I felt like the acting was pretty poor, like
across the board.
Across the board, there's some good stuff, like the sidekick. That guy did pretty well. Felicity Jones, she did fairly well. She didn't have like much to go off of.
Everyone did a pretty dang good job with the material that they had. There were a few for me that really stuck out like a sore thumb. By far the weakest part of the movie for me is Forest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera.
Oh my gosh. It's like he prepared so hard for that role.
He
prepared so
trying
hard.
so hard.
You gotta give him props for trying so hard.
He's like overacting everything.
I think he came to the director and he's like, "This is how I'm gonna play it," and the director just didn't know what to do.
Well, it's like, you're Forest Whitaker. I can't tell you no, but I'm going to strongly advise you to keep working on it.
Take it down. And he's like, "No, why?"
I have no idea what he was trying to accomplish with that character.
Yeah, and in his mind, like he's like, this is Academy Award winning
character
work
I'm
right
nailing
here.
This character right
this
now.
accent that I've made up or whatever he's doing.
Oh gosh. Let's never put Forest Whitaker in anything Star Wars again. How did he get an Oscar?
Everything he's in, all I see is Forest Whitaker. And then in this movie, I see Forest Whitaker with a mental problem.
I might have even liked the movie more as a whole if it hadn't started out with Forest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera. I was so glad when he died.
Can we just say that line again? This is the greatest line ever written in movie
3,
history.
2, 1. Save the rebellion. Save the dream. It's so bad. I'm so glad they didn't have his other lines, though, from the trailers. This movie had a lot in the trailers that was not actually in the film.
Oh, thank goodness.
Felicity Jones' line.
I rebel.
Forest Whitaker as...
What will you become?
I wasn't super on board with K2SO, Alan Tudyk.
At the beginning, like, for the first half of the movie, it was hard for me to get on with him. Because, like, he had too much personality.
Yeah.
Like,
he didn't feel like a droid to me.
No, yeah. His performance made me feel more like I was watching CGI robot.
Less is always more in the Star Wars universe. They gave us too much of him.
They're like, he's the funny guy. Like, he's always gonna say the funny thing.
The comedic relief that, like, actually, like, hit and worked with me was through Sharut, the blind guy.
Oh, no.
Yes,
why are you making me agree with you? With K2SO, after the midpoint of the movie, I started getting more on board with him, and there were like some lines that I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And then like him at the end, where he's like fighting off the troopers, that was pretty cool.
Well, it's got to be hard. He was in like a mocap suit the whole time.
He was in a really skinny robot suit. How did
they fit him in there?
What?
Riz Ahmed as Bodhi Rook. He was
pretty good.
I think he was actually my favorite as far as acting goes.
He had a good look to him.
He didn't have a lot of dialogue, really, but I could see in his like facial expressions and the way he talked, just the emotion and like the conflict inside.
I'm gonna go back on what I said with Felicity Jones, because the more that I think about it, I keep on thinking about this versus The Force Awakens, and someone like Rey made me like instantly love this character. She was someone like I wanted to follow behind. She had that right amount of sweetness / like badass in her. I mean, Felicity Jones is great, but in this movie, there was nothing about her that I wanted to like follow. Like even with her speech that she gives to the soldiers. Oh my gosh, weakest speech ever.
Yeah, I don't buy her as somebody who was raised until the age of 16 by a like warmonger.
Warlord.
Yeah.
Sort of guy, yeah. Donnie Sharut.
Donnie Osmond as Sharut.
Why was
Yen.
he in this movie? Donnie Yen, I know you loved him. But man,
so good.
He was such a huge problem for me. Every line was so ingenuine and just like he was reading it off of the paper.
There were lines where it was like, that's just bad writing.
For me, it was his acting. I hated the casting on that.
Would you rather have had Jackie Chan?
Yeah. What happened to that guy? But there was just something about him that I'm watching that I was just like, I'm taken out of the movie every time I look at this guy.
No, what?
The stormtroopers acting.
The stormtroopers were so bad in this movie. Anyone over an intercom was so bad when they're like, it's Rogue One. And then they're like, Rogue One? There's no Rogue One.
That's impossible.
Whoa, calm down. Maybe there is. Did you check your Files again? Just look at the list. We're on there. Like, is that Forest Whitaker in there? I think if everyone was just acting like Forest Whitaker in this movie, it would have been so much better. Then it would have been better than The Force Awakens.
Greatest comedy I've ever seen.
Because of some really, really terrible performances, they kind of overshadow the decent to good performances for me. So I'm going to give this 6 out of 10.
I'm going to give it 1 point lower and go 5 again. It was like half and half for me on performances here. Category 3, visuals. I don't know about you, but I think as far as visuals go for this film, I don't have much to complain about. It was by far, I think, the best part of this film. Everything from the cinematography, the VFX, the art direction, everything was pretty freaking stellar.
As far as Star Wars movies go, this was some of my favorite cinematography. Shaky cam in a Star Wars movie?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. And just the wide, sweeping landscape shots that they had at the very beginning.
Their locations.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They did a great job at bringing all the sets and the costumes back to that old, like, gritty, lived-in feel that they're going for, like in the original trilogy.
And matching episode 4 pretty dang well.
Yeah.
Super 70s hairstyles and mustaches. And Mon Mothma. Oh, man.
Dude, you just love yourself some Mon.
Mon Mothma. We can all get on that train. Say you love her.
I will not. The special effects I thought were amazing in this.
But like having the CGI faces.
Tarkin and Leia.
Yeah. Worked sometimes, and then more often than not, I'm thrown out of it because I can just see CGI.
So for Leia, it didn't work for me at all.
She didn't look right.
No, she looked like sickly pale and like.
They got her buns right though.
The buns were right. Wait, which ones? As far as Tarkin, there were a few shots and a few scenes where I was like, okay, this works.
They should have just not, shown his face as much.
No, he didn't need to be in it as much as he was.
The first time you see him is just in the reflection. I'm like, okay, cool. Leave it at that. Have this conversation with just his reflection. And then he turns around and I'm like, no!
Or
CGI!
There were plenty of ways that they could have worked around that to be like, look, we can make this look really good. We're this close to getting it to look perfect, but we can't. So we're going to cheat it so that it does look perfect. Know your limitations. As far as CGI faces go,
best I've ever seen.
Right.
But it's still doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work yet.
I was kind of bummed that there weren't as many practicals, especially with Admiral Akbar's race. What are they called?
Mon Calamari?
Yeah, that. They were practical except for their face with CGI, which cancels everything out for me.
Right.
I want to see this.
Well, and it doesn't make sense that they didn't do that because just last year in The Force Awakens, we saw tons of Admiral Akbar and he's just a puppet. We already buy into that. Why?
And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. The fans love it too.
Don't change that.
And then the slug thing.
What's
its name?
Forrest Whitaker's little slug pet. First off,
that looked bad.
That didn't need to be in the movie. Why was that there? You could take that scene out. It wouldn't affect the overall story at all, and it would make it better because it would be less Forrest Whitaker.
Which is always a plus.
Forrest Whitaker ruined the CGI in that scene.
He ruined everything!
Forrest Whitaker! Beyond that, though, the visuals in this were pretty amazing.
Pretty freaking rad.
The Star Destroyers that you could absolutely tell were 100% models and miniatures.
So fun.
I also love what they did with bringing back some of the characters from A New Hope by taking old footage from that movie and putting it into this movie.
That was seamless, yeah. I didn't even know.
Yeah. So for me, as far as a rating on visuals for this movie, I would have given it a 10, except then there's those bad CGI elements that they take me right out of the story. So I will give it an 8.5.
That's not a real score. You can't give halves.
All right, I'll give it a 9 because I'm feeling generous and I love Star Wars.
That's pretty high.
Fine, I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
So I think as far as visuals go, I mean, it's still pretty great, but I think there's definitely a lot higher movies for me. A 7 for me.
So pretentious, man. This guy.
I always just gotta one-up you, except
one
down you.
Category 4. Sound. The sound in this movie was great as far as sound design, the explosions, all the little laser blasts and everything like that. I really liked what they did with the Black Stormtroopers, the Death Troopers, how their voice was they had that voice scrambler
Yeah, they're kind of like the parents off of Charlie Brown movies.
Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool because you couldn't understand everything they were saying. It instantly made them more mysterious and cooler than a normal stormtrooper. That's
More of a threat, yeah.
Can I see some identification?
Yeah, it was nice not to hear more stormtroopers.
He's blind. Is he deaf too?
Yeah, and I think a big point when you talk about is the soundtrack.
Absolutely. Michael Giacchino.
This is the first film to not be
John Williams.
John Williams,
Yeah.
Which had its pluses and negatives. I was kind of bummed to not hear a lot of our favorite Star Wars themes, which makes sense, but in a way made it feel less Star Wars for me.
Felt like he tried to like sprinkle them throughout, you know, every once in a while you would hear like the Imperial March or like the main Star Wars theme, but then it made me want it even more. Oh, you're getting into it? Nope, it's gone. Now I'm gonna come in with this other new stuff that you don't even know.
Well, and he'd always like start off with the same notes, and so you'd be like,
It's it.
and then he'd change it
Yeah,
completely
exactly.
and be like, I hate you.
Usually I can walk out of a movie like this and hum some sort of theme that was in the movie.
That's right.
Right?
There wasn't.
I can't hum a single thing
Yeah.
that came out of this that wasn't already in one of the other movies.
Was there a theme?
There was.
I
It was
think-
that one that starts with like the Star Wars notes and then like goes off and changes every time, but I couldn't tell you what it
didn't
is because every time I try it, I sing the Star Wars theme.
I didn't love that. So I think the fact that we can't remember is not a good sign. But Michael Giacchino, his strong point is when you let his music take the forefront.
Totally.
When he's able to do his full score, he shines so well. Like the last
I know exactly what you're talking
15
about.
minutes or so, that
Yeah.
score was just...
It's during those like slower, paused, quiet moments where he's almost using the music as an actor, and he's just playing with our emotions and
Yeah,
pulling at our
he
heartstrings.
plays
It's
it so
he's
well.
so good at that. The big like bombastic stuff during the battles, I don't like what he does with that. It feels too childish, and especially in a movie like this where they're definitely going for a more gritty war feel. You're seeing all these people blow up and get stepped on by AT-ATs and get
Yeah.
shot, and the music's like boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. And you're just like, wait, what am I supposed to feel here? Is this fun, or are these people dying and I'm supposed to care about it? Like-
It feels like the similar stuff he did with, Star Trek.
Right, but Star Trek, the goal with that film was not to make you feel like you're in the trenches with these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think those last 15 minutes make
Oh.
up for so much.
Slayed. So good.
So good.
When those like
He does it.
sweeping like violins come in. So good.
Oh my god.
I knew you were going to like that because you're a huge fan of Lost, and he does
Oh.
that a lot in Lost.
I love Lost. You have to admit his soundtrack for Lost is phenomenal.
Golden. Pretty good for this one, too.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like sound goes, I'd probably give it a 9.
Now I'm going to one-up you / one down you.
Oh,
I'm going to give it an 8 because for me, the sound design was flawless and the score was not. And for me, a soundtrack is so much the heart and soul of a movie. It really is what like can pull me into it emotionally. And it didn't do that for me in this, and I felt like it really should have. And so I will give it an 8 out of 10.
Fair enough. Douche.
Category 5, direction.
I feel like we've complained a lot about this film, and I think a lot of it comes back to the director, and I feel like a lot of it could have been changed with better direction. Gareth Edwards, to me, is someone who continuously makes okay films. Monsters, Godzilla, now Rogue One, and they're all movies that have good things and a lot of bad things, and so they even out just okay movies for me. And so I don't know why he keeps on getting bigger and bigger films. He's not a good director.
See, I think the reason he keeps getting these big films is because his films make money. But I don't think that that's necessarily because they are great films. It's because somehow he's gotten these franchise films. So he had Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
Which made a ton of money, but it was because it was a Godzilla film, not because it was a mind-blowing, awesome film. And now this is going to make a ton of money. The reason this movie will do well is not because of Gareth Edwards. It is because
It's Star Wars.
in fact, they had to reshoot. It's reported that it was about 40% of this movie.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's a bad sign. They brought in Tony Gilroy, another director, to co-direct the whole reshooting process with him.
Oh, for real?
For real.
Yeah, that's bad. That's super bad.
And so to me, after watching this, it almost feels like first and second act were directed by Gareth Edwards, and then the third act was directed by Tony Gilroy, and that's why it really stands out, the shining act of this movie, and 5 steps above the other two.
Yeah, because to me, it just doesn't feel like he cares about performances. If he sees a bad performance, he's not going to change it. Hence Forest Whitaker.
Well, I mean, there's no way the director of this film is an actor's director, because it seems to me like he was just, hey, here's the script, this is what's going to go on in the scene, go for it, and I'm going to trust you. And it's definitely important for a director to be able to trust his actors, but you cast people in this film, in any film, who you can trust to make those good decisions, and when they're not in line with your vision, then you've got to steer the ship and right the boat and, you know, make those judgment calls. Your say is final.
Yeah.
And those actors are signing on to this project to listen to your direction. And I feel like he didn't really get involved. At least it didn't come across that way, especially with Forest Whitaker. You know, he was just like, you're Forest Whitaker, do what you want.
Save the rebellion. Do what you want.
However, I did like the choices he made as far as overall aesthetic of the film.
Yeah, I mean, once again, visually, he
Knocked it out of the
obviously
park.
put a lot of time in, and it showed. But I mean, as far as his main job, he
Yeah.
forgot what he was doing.
Director is definitely supposed to know when to pull back on certain elements and when to put more time and effort into others. You've got to be able to take a step back and say, okay, clearly, like, we need more time taken away from this and put into maybe a quiet little scene of character development between some of these characters.
Well, yeah, and I feel like overall he took it in the wrong direction. I mean, people keep on calling this a war movie, and to me, watching it twice now, I would not call it a war movie. Like, I don't think that's a war film. If that's what he was going for, he failed, and I feel like it could have been done so much better in that regard.
So what would you give this in the category of direction?
I mean, because there's so much we don't know, good or bad, about like the process behind the scenes, who was the cause of what,
And the reshoots and all that drama that happened. Yeah.
I'm gonna err on the side of safety and give it a 6.
All right. I'm actually going to stick right by your side on that. I will give it a 6 as well in the category of direction. We did it, man. We agreed on something.
We're the best.
All right, so we've each scored this individually. Now we're going to combine those scores to give it a backseat film review score of 867. It was good. It's not great.
Yeah,
so I didn't love it, but I liked it. It's Star Wars.
Here's our final review, though, and it's the ultimate review for every movie because in cinema there is only one thing you have to adhere by, and that's not to bore your audience. So the real question is, were we entertained? And so we'll give this a pass or fail. So Nick, were you entertained by this movie?
Besides looking at it from a critical standpoint and nitpicking and looking at all its flaws, I had a great time in this movie. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Nerd.
Yes. If it wasn't a Star Wars movie, I don't know if I would have been entertained. However, I personally was. So for this, I give it a pass. I would recommend this movie for any Star Wars fans out there. If you're not already a fan of the franchise, this isn't the one to jump on that bandwagon with.
And I think for me, I would also give it a pass. I think I was entertained the whole time. I think, like you, based on the fact that it is a Star Wars film, that we're able to jump into that universe again, which is always awesome. But I think it is important to keep in mind, if this wasn't a Star Wars film, we would hate this movie so much more.
Yeah, if this wasn't a Star Wars film,
As just a movie, it's not very good.
Yeah.
As a Star Wars movie, it's fun.
Yeah, it
You
is.
should see it. The last question I just want to ask is, like, where would you put this as far as Star Wars films go? Like, how would you rank them?
My favorite Star Wars film is Empire Strikes Back.
Of course.
I've actually got to go Force Awakens after that, as far
Nice.
as just enjoyment.
Nice.
A New Hope, Return of the Jedi. I might even put Revenge of the Sith next, and then Rogue One. But Rogue One is definitely better than The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Like, as far as the prequels for Star Wars goes, this is the prequel everyone wanted. This is how it should have been done. Not perfect, but a good prequel for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where would you rank it in your...
Exactly the same.
Really?
That's why I said nice the whole time.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for a backseat film review. We had a great time doing this.
Please feel free to comment what your guys' thoughts about the movie were and any suggestions on movies you'd like us to review, either movies that are coming out or have already been made. We really like listening to ourselves talk.
And if you know a movie that Forest Whitaker is great in, please let us know, because he needs to be redeemed in our eyes. Tune in next month when we review our on-again, off-again girlfriend M. Night Shyamalan's next film, Split. Hopefully it's a good one. Or it could just be another Last Airbender.
Oh, I love that movie.
And I hate you. Go ahead and check out our other work at paradoxdigital.net, and we will see you next time.
Subscribe. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, and may the 4th be with you.
Hanukkah.